Mickey Mouse. Let's talk about Mickey Mouse's first short made, Plain Crazy. Now, to clarify something, you're probably like, isn't that Steamboat Willie? Steamboat Willie was the first one released. Steamboat Willie is what gave Disney distribution after they left whatever company that was because of everything with Oswald and helped launch what Disney would become. Plain Crazy, however, was the first one produced and did screen. It actually test screened way before, which happened in September, in May 15th, 1928. But it didn't get released until March 17th, 1929. And when it was released with sound in it because of the success of Steamboat Willie. It was not originally made with sound. Those were put in later, which they did do with some silent films, or to re-release them, to make a quick buck off them, they already shot it as a silent film and sound had happened, all sorts of stuff. And that's effectively what they did with Plain Crazy. Although everyone's saying the first 3 Mickey Mouse shorts are in the public domain, that is true to a degree, as the silent version of Plain Crazy is in the public domain. The sound version is not, as it was released actually 4th after Barn Dance, which I didn't know. I really didn't know that. I really thought it was 3rd until I researched this. So it's like, that's actually why, by the way, I re-research things all the time, because there's new context that gets discovered. There's things I thought I knew, but I didn't. Stuff like that. Just because what you thought you knew, someone could give a new interview, or there'd be a new podcast with them or something. And suddenly you're like, oh, that's now that I understand that. So anyway, sorry, tangent. But yes, this was the first one made. It was alleged, and this is the story that's always been told, that basically this was made by Ub Iwerks. Ub Iwerks drew what people have been said, basically animated all day. He made about 700 drawings a day to make this film happen, which is insanity. This was, much like I've said before, the early Mickey Mouse shorts were all about pop culture things at the time. As much as people say, why do we have to do pop culture references? Why do so many things do that nowadays? The first 3 Mickey Mouses were all pop culture and topical references. This is about Charles Lindbergh, or Lindy. You actually have Mickey Mouse looking at a book, seeing a picture of Charles Lindbergh, and then wanting to fly. I don't really want to get into Charles Lindbergh. It's a whole thing, but he was a famous guy who flew and was real good at it and stuff. That's basically all you really need to know today. Let's not get into, I don't know which thing, but we just want to get into it. Basically, Ub Iwerks made most of this. I think everyone else sort of did cleanup, and Disney, I guess, sharpened his pencils. Not exactly sure what Disney did, but one thing you'll notice about this is Mickey and Minnie look dramatically different. Something I probably should have watched them all in a row is Steamboat Willie actually has a redesign of Mickey Mouse. He looked differently in these first 2. He looks a little like his, kind of like stick arms and legs and stuff like that. So it's actually kind of interesting to see how he was first drawn and first animated, because it is different from how we would see him in other stuff. I would actually say, even though this is far less recognizable, if you're going to do your own Mickey Mouse thing, this would probably be an easier one to do, because one, Disney's probably not going to come after you, but then it's obscure, so I don't think the point would not be made. Anyway, so Mickey Mouse sees a picture of Lindbergh, has instead of just abusing animals in this one, he makes the animals into slave labor. So, he forced them to make him a plane. He then has I think it's a dog in the plane that he twists around to make it fly. And then he rips off a turkey's tail feathers and uses it as the tail for his plane. And then Minnie just sort of winks at him, and then they fly around in it. A lot of that is sort of typical stuff, although it is well done. I do think not only is it impressive Ub Iwerks drew so much and did all this himself, there's a lot of actually cool things in this, and particularly the POV shots of them when they're in the plane. I do think, based on the dates, so because of when Wings came out, which is a 1927 film directed by William Wellman, trust me, I have reviewed it, as I've done with all William Wellman films. One thing that Wings was very inventive for, because William Wellman was a flyer, had the camera pointed as you were pointing at me, as the camera was pointing at me, but you'd see behind you, so you'd see the scope of how they were flying. Effectively, that's what Ub kind of sort of replicates in this short. He does POV shots of them like flying, so you understand what they're flying towards, what they're flying against, things like that. And there's, I think it does particular cool stuff, particularly with the cow and the plane, kind of a craze of the cow. I think it's Mickey's on racing with the cow with the plane. A lot of the kind of cool plane POV or perspective shots are really cool. Like, you really have to think like how different that was when you look at what's going on in Van Buren, you look at what's going on in Fleischer Brothers. This was really some really interesting stuff. I'm surprised when I was watching this didn't take off at the time the way it did, particularly like Wings was like a massive hit right when this was test screening. So, and also they do a thing where at the end when you see the plane like kind of was supposedly crash, they actually did a thing that animators do now where they draw a bigger picture and sort of zoom into it. They did that, but they moved the paper. They had a whole setup with like books and like moved the camera so it looked like the plane was crashing, which is fairly inventive. It looks pretty good for the time period. This is basically like them messing around with the plane and stuff. I do quite like the short. I am surprised how it got pushed so far back and stuff. I think it shows the inventiveness of particularly of Iwerks, who's the real, in my mind, creator of Mickey Mouse. What he originally wanted for that character, what Mickey Mouse was, and how smart they were as animators and creators that they were able to come up with a lot of this stuff and use what was popular with flying at the time, which was using the POV thing. That is actually true with everything with Wings and stuff like that. So they were really like having a conversation with live action film as well as doing interesting stuff with animation. I do think what Iwerks did here is very impressive. I'm saddened that this didn't get to be the first Mickey Mouse short, but I think it sort of worked out because obviously Steamboat Willie would be the one that is the short. You know, it sort of works a lot better at like kind of selling it with the sound and everything like that. But I think this is a nice adventure. It would be the basis of the first Mickey Mouse comic strip, which was drawn by Iwerks. There's a recent Comic Trips video about the Mickey Mouse comic strips that is fairly good. But I think if you are familiar with Mickey Mouse, the Mickey Mouse shorts and stuff like that, this is a really good little short. And it is not on Disney Plus. You have to go other places. In a lot of places, it is barred in whatever country. I guess in some places it's not as like memorable and crazy, but I do quite like watching it, and I think it's like a fun little Mickey Mouse short. And if you have gotten into more of the silent early Mickey Mouse stuff, I think it is a definite must watch. And it is actually the first Mickey Mouse cartoon produced, even if it wasn't the first one released. It's kind of like an interesting little pilot of what they would do with this character and showing the inventive quality that would kind of make this character eventually a star.